Welcome to Can I Butt In, the Bowel Research UK podcast, where we welcome bowel cancer and bowel disease patients, researchers, healthcare professionals and carers to butt in and share their experiences. We're picking a topic every episode and getting to the bottom of it. I'm your host, Sam Alexandra Rose. I'm the Patient and Public Involvement Manager at Bowel Research UK, and as a patient myself, I'm excited to bring more patient and researcher voices into the spotlight. Welcome to today's podcast episode, which is all about an exciting project Bowel Research UK is involved with in partnership with Guts UK, our charity friends. And here with me today is my friend Helen West, Public Patient Involvement and Engagement Officer at Guts UK. Guts UK is the only UK charity funding research into the digestive system from top to tail. So that's the gut, liver and pancreas. Their mission is to provide expert information, raise public awareness, and fund life-changing and life-saving research into digestive diseases. So today we're going to be telling you all about the Diverticular Disease Priority Setting Partnership. We'll explain what a priority setting partnership is, what we've done so far, what's going to happen in the future, how you can get involved, and most importantly, why we're looking into diverticular disease. Because both of us can talk about this subject standing on our heads, and it might be quite amusing for you listeners to pretend that that is exactly what we're doing, because we know all of the answers to all of these questions already, we're going to tackle it like a sort of FAQ. And so I will pose a question and we will answer together. But first, hi Helen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite, Sam. It's fantastic. And it's absolutely brilliant that we're working in collaboration as two charities together. And it's so important. And so I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's just start with the nice basic question we have. What is diverticular disease before we get into what is a PSP and all of that sort of stuff? Because there's a lot of different words associated with diverticular disease. So we've got diverticulitis, diverticulosis, we've got diverticular disease. And I get the impression that patients may have been told that they have any one of those. And it may be a good idea for us to just outline what each of them are, because just to sort of show how they're all sort of associated with each other.
You are so right, Sam. There are so many diverticulum something, and it is incredibly confusing. And when people get diagnosis, they often get extremely worried, and understandably, because it is a word, the words sound quite concerning, but often they're not concerning at all. So we'll start with diverticulum. So that is where the diverticular, which is a small pouch about 1 centimetre in size, it actually sticks out of the wall of the large bowel. So that's kind of what the diverticulum means. The diverticular is often, it refers to more than one diverticulum. So often people are only diagnosed with one, and if it's diverticular, it means that they're diagnosed with more than one. Diverticulitis is when it becomes several diverticulums and they get inflamed and infected. It all sounds very confusing, I know, but that's kind of the language that is used. And then diverticulosis is a term which means that it is not diverticular disease. It means that there's a presence of diverticular, and often people are not even aware that they've got it. And the only time that they're aware that they've got it is if they've undergone something like a colonoscopy or a sigmoidoscopy or something like that. So it's often detected and they've never had any condition or problems with that at all. So that's kind of the breakdown of the language, really, more than anything else.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So yeah, you have this kind of umbrella of diverticular disease, and then nearly knocked my microphone over. All of these different things that kind of fit underneath it.
Correct.
We're professional here.
Absolutely.
So yes, and we'll talk about the protocol and all of the documents that we've made for the PSP a bit later, but it just reminded me as well that it was really important for us to, when we were starting to write up the documentation for the PSP, to outline all of this so that people understand, so that people aren't confused, like, well, I have diverticulitis, I don't have diverticulosis, I don't know what diverticulosis is. So yeah, it's just really good to kind of outline all of that. So our second FAQ is, how common is diverticulitis or diverticular disease, and who is affected?
Yeah, so it is a very common condition. They're generally saying that anybody that's over the sort of the age of 40, 45, it will be 1 in 3 people that suffer from diverticulitis or diverticulosis or one of those. But we are one of the, which we will go on to later, but as you know, Sam, more and more we know from the people that we're speaking to and people involved in our PSP are getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
And, one of, again, we'll go into this in a moment, but, one of the reasons that we're doing this priority setting partnership is because we don't know why people get diverticulitis or diverticular disease. And we're now seeing younger and younger people, and we've got no idea why that is. So it is really important for us to identify that. Definitely.
Yeah, really important that this research sort of addresses that. Yeah, as you say, because around half the people of population of Western countries over 50 have diverticular in their colon, which rises to 70% by the age of 80. But as you say, we can't discount the number of young people who are also affected, because as that number of younger people affected rises, then we need an even more an increase of understanding and treatment and care for all of these different people. And I also have a statistic here that says that 160,775 people were admitted into hospital with diverticulitis in England in 2020. So that gives you an idea of the scale of it as well. It's something that people might not have necessarily heard of if they don't have it or know somebody who has it, but yeah, more common than people might think.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And it's getting more and more common. And some of that is we obviously don't know, hence why we're doing the research, but also, our diagnosis is getting better as well, where we've got a better understanding. So I think more and more people are getting diagnosed with it
Yeah.
quicker as well now. And I think that's making a difference.
Yeah. And I guess as well, with these incidental findings of diverticulosis as well, it may be that somebody has a different condition or symptoms related to another bowel condition, and then they happen to find diverticulosis on the colonoscopy as well. And it's good that that can be identified too.
Definitely. Yeah. 100%.
So my next question I've got is, what are the symptoms? So I'll rattle off the ones that I have in front of me, and you can let me know if I've missed any. But we have intermittent abdominal pain in the left lower quadrant, and we should put a little asterisk here, shouldn't we? Because that's most of the time in the left lower quadrant, isn't it? But some people also
Correct.
experience pain on the right hand side a little bit more
Yeah.
unusually.
Yeah. And normally the right hand side, it's been identified it's generally within the Asian community. That's not always the case, but that's where the majority of it is. So, yes. Yeah.
And we also have constipation, diarrhea, occasional large rectal bleeds, tenderness in the belly, either left or right, as we've just said, and potentially bowel incontinence as well. And I have a statistic here that says it can lead to complications for up to 15 to 25% of people, and those complications can be diverticulitis. So that's kind of having the symptoms from it, obstruction, perforation, bleeding, abscess, and fistula. So yeah, it can be minor, or it can be much more severe.
Fortunately, in most cases, it is minor. But as you quite rightly said with your statistics, sort of around 20 to 25% of people have more severe complications. But yes, the other kind of area of diverticulitis is that a lot of people get really high temperatures, and they get very nauseous as well. So
Okay.
that's kind of another area as well.
So we're starting to form a picture here. We're kind of seeing that there's a few different factors and different, like people can get pain in different areas. People can, as you say, mostly have mild symptoms, but it can in some cases be more serious. Older people can get it, but also younger people can get it. The pain can be on the left side, or in the Asian community, it might be on the right side. There's lots of different angles to this, isn't there? And it
There
just kind of
is.
shows you the importance of looking at it from every angle.
Correct. And the other area that you have to look at as well is that, your stools. So you need to make sure that your stools or your poo isn't showing any signs of mucus or blood, anything like that. And that can be for any condition, any bowel condition, but particularly that's a big sign as well. So if you've got mucus or blood in your stools and your poo, it's really important to have that checked out for sure. Yeah, definitely.
And we often say as well, looking for anything that isn't normal for you, because we all
Yeah,
have our different, one person might just go like once a day in the morning, one person
yeah,
might go more frequently during the day, and that's normal for you. But it's, if something becomes like, oh, I haven't gone in a couple of days, that's not normal for me.
yeah.
Or I've been going frequently for a prolonged amount of time, that's not normal for me. And just sort of knowing your own body, isn't it, for all bowel conditions,
Yeah,
really?
but it's so important. And, as much as there is a stigma, a big stigma often about people looking at their stools or looking at their poo, it tells us so, so much. And as you quite rightly said, Sam, we need to make sure that people are checking that. And everybody goes, oh, that's, but it is so important, because if you do have those changes and you don't see anybody about it, it can really escalate and cause major problems in the future. So you're better to have the slight embarrassment now of going to see somebody if there is a change than holding out and then when it is really severe. So yeah,
Yeah, better
yeah,
not to
definitely.
suffer in silence. Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on the Guts UK website, we have what we call our tutorial, and that's really informative, and that's a little interactive in a nice way that you can press on sort of the color or whatever, and then it can kind of show you, yeah, if it's like that for X amount of time, that's fine, but if it continues like this, then you need to go and see somebody about it. And it gives you an explanation, because sometimes we look at something and we're like a bit horrified, or it may be a slight change, but it could just be something it could be something very simplistic or something that you need to look at. So yeah, definitely worth having a look at the tutorial.
I didn't know about that, and I love the title of
Ah,
that. Tutorial is
tutorial.
brilliant.
Yeah. It is definitely on our website, and it's really good. Yeah,
That's a good point
absolutely.
as well about thinking about what you've eaten, because as long-time listeners will know, I have an internal pouch. So that means that things can go through me quite quickly, and sometimes they come out in a similar way that they went in. So I
Yeah.
might see something in the toilet and think, oh gosh, is that blood? And it's a red pepper or something.
Yeah, beetroot's the other one, isn't it? That
Yes.
often, so be a little bit aware of that if you eat beetroot, sometimes that can come through looking like, oh my gosh, is that blood or something? Just think a little bit before getting stressed. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that, oh yeah, actually, I had a beetroot salad or something, you know,
that's it.
12
Yeah.
hours ago or 24 hours ago. So yeah, but that would be the only one that I would say that you've got to be a little bit careful of. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's amazing what it can tell you.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay, our next question then is, so why does diverticular disease require more research?
that's a very good question. Well, the really short answer of that is we don't actually know why, or we're uncertain of the causes of diverticular and why it develops. That's the absolute short answer to that. We have little offshoots of why, we have a little bit of an understanding why, but we don't have full answers. And that's why this priority setting partnership is so important.
And
So,
considering how many
yeah,
people it affects, as we've outlined, there actually hasn't been that much research that's been done into it yet. So yeah, as you say, there's lots of unknowns about how it develops. Also, why is it starting to affect people at a younger age? And what are the treatments? What are the best treatments for it? How can people best manage it? So what we really need to do is to identify what all of these unanswered questions are in this area, which will this priority setting partnership is hoping to I've forgotten the word.
To achieve.
To achieve.
Hey!
I was going to edit that, but I might just leave it in. Teamwork.
Absolutely. And I think there's lots of ifs and buts around this diverticular disease. People have, it's down to, a lot of people have considered it, it's been down to lifestyle. Is it genetic? There are some answers, but they're very, very limited. The other great thing about the priority setting partnership is that it will also identify the areas that maybe questions that people are asking that actually we do have that information about it. So that kind of the unknown knowns, and we can answer those as well. So that's going to be very interesting as well, of what gets produced from that as well.
Yeah, that would be really good. No question will be wasted, and we'll go in a minute into exactly what the process is there. But yeah, it will be really useful to see, well, this has actually been answered, but people don't know what the answer is. So maybe there's more work that we need to do there in terms of public engagement and teaching people more about the disease. Next question then, why are BRUK and Guts partnering on this?
Because we're two amazing charities.
Absolutely.
Simple question, simple answer. Absolutely. I think it's absolutely vital. I mean, we both come with our specialist areas. We both come with a very passionate community that need and want answers as well. And I just, it just makes absolute sense that we collaborate together as two charities that are very passionate about research and our communities, our patients, our carers, and getting factual evidence-based information and, heading in the right direction of research for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's a great team because obviously by the name, Bowel Research UK focuses more on the research and not so much on patient support and that sort of thing, which is really where Guts UK particularly shines, doesn't it? I know you have lots of experience with knowing like how patients feel about illnesses like diverticular and what's important to them and what they where they have issues.
Yeah. And also we're an evidence-based charity, so all our information is PIF ticked with the NHS. So we make sure that all our patient information is evidence-based. And one of our biggest leaflets that we get asked for is on diverticular disease. So out of all the other 40 odd leaflets on different conditions that we have, that is the highest one that we get asked for regularly, all the time. Yeah, so that also shows how important it is to all our communities, that are looking for more further information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and there's no other charities that are focusing on diverticular disease, and there hasn't been a PSP that's been undertaken for this condition before. I mean, as we've already sort of said, it's an underfunded and under-researched condition. And yeah, we have that good mix of research and patient support. So let's get into the meat of what is a priority setting partnership then, because I have a couple of points where I mentioned the JLA. So I think that the first thing to say is that while Guts UK and Bowel Research UK are jointly collaborating on this as equal partners, we're doing it with the James Lind Alliance. And I don't know if you want to say a bit more about what the JLA is, Helen, because you've had quite a bit of experience with them now, because this is not your first rodeo. This is not your first PSP.
It isn't at all. I've been in the fortunate position to be involved with the James Lind Alliance for the last 3 years. And we have completed 2 previous priority setting partnerships, one in pancreatitis and one in irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. So yeah, no, you're right, Sam. This is definitely not my first outing as far as the James Lind Alliance is concerned. So it just shows you how passionate we are as a charity in our involvement with the James Lind Alliance, because we know that their methodology and everything behind doing a James Lind Alliance priority setting partnership, how great it is and how successful it is as well. So to give you a little bit of an idea about who James Lind Alliance is, they're a non-profit making organisation that is funded and sits under the NIHR, so the National Institute of Health Research. So they kind of sit under that. They've completed well over 150 priority setting partnerships already. So they're seriously got credibility behind them. And the reason that they came about was to ensure those that fund health research are aware of what matters to patients, carers, and clinicians who need to use the research in everyday lives. So that's kind of how they came about, to make sure that the patients, carers, and clinicians all are on the same page when it comes to researching about varying different conditions. And one of the greatest things about the James Lind Alliance is that their processes are completely transparent. So everything, as you well know, Sam, that we do is completely transparent, and the information is available once the process has been completed. It's very inclusive, and it is of equal voice between the patient carer and the clinician, the healthcare professional. So it's equal voice. No one is coming together on the priority setting partnership higher or lower than anybody else. It is 100% equal. They do exclude certain organisations that particularly may have commercial interests. So they do exclude pharmaceutical companies that or organisations that maybe could make profit out of research questions. I kind of want to put that in there because I think that's really important for people to know. So that's kind of the principles behind the JLA initially. Yeah. And it's about identifying the evidence and uncertainties of, questions that have been asked for research. Does that bring it together a little bit of what that's all about?
That's really good. So the outcome of a PSP, just to sort of segue into the next question then, is to have these 10 priorities that we will end with that have been decided by patients and healthcare professionals and carers and families as well. So we'll go into the process of what the steps are for the PSP, but eventually where we want to end up is we have these 10 priorities of research questions that healthcare professionals, patients, carers, families have all come up with together. Everybody's had their say about it so that researchers can come along, they can think, well, I want to do some research into diverticular disease. What should I be looking at? They'll have these 10 questions that we've put together for them. And those 10 questions will be things that are really important to patients and to healthcare professionals. Like, these are the things that it would be really great to focus on and could make a real difference to people's lives. The outcome is a tool that helps researchers to best focus their efforts on things that are really, really going to help people in the future.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
So should we talk through the process of the PSP and where we started and then how we're going to get to those 10 priorities? Because it's a long project, isn't it? It's going to be about 12 to 18 months, depending on how quickly we can sort of get it all together. But there's very specific steps that we need to follow in order to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, Sam, I talk about this a lot, probably to the point where you probably just want to shout at me now. But I do talk about the fact that this process is completely transparent. I know I've already said it, and I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably end up saying it again, because it is really vital that everybody knows that it is a transparent process. And at no point is there all the availability and all the information that goes into this PSP is available as I said, at the end of it. So to kind of start off the transparency right from the very beginning is that we do what we call a matrix of our steering group. So we bring together a steering group that covers patients, carers, and healthcare professionals from all four nations of the United Kingdom. And that can, with the healthcare professionals, we bring on healthcare professionals that have anything to do with diverticular, so that we have a dietitian, we have a consultant, we have a surgeon, we have a psychiatrist. So all aspects of the healthcare professional side of it. And then from there, we bring on patient and carers, and that they cover from the 4 areas. So diverticular disease, from diverticulosis. So they cover the different aspects of diverticular disease. And then from there, we also make sure that we have a range of gender, ethnicity, age. So we cover the whole sort of spectrum. So that's how we kind of start our first process, as you well know, Sam. We get our steering group together, which consists of 16 people, and that's equal. That's 8 healthcare professionals and 8 patient carers. So that brings our steering group together. And then from there, the main priority for the steering group initially is to get the protocol. What is important on the protocol? So what are we going to cover when it comes to this? So are we going to cover the management of patients and care information? Do we cover condition? What do we actually cover in the protocol? So from there, Sam, shall I hand that back to you and you can go into more detail on that?
Yeah, so yeah, we put the protocol together, and as with anything, we have these regular steering group meetings where everybody agrees on all of the documents. Anything that me and Helen and the JLA do together all gets taken back to the steering group, and we take comments and we get approval and things like that. And the protocol sets out the scope of the PSP. So what are we covering? What are we excluding? For example, it's only looking at diverticular disease in the large bowel rather than elsewhere in the digestive tract. It's, again, as I said earlier, is where we define all of our terms and what do we mean by diverticular disease. So all of that sort of stuff is laid out in the protocol, and our aims and who's on the steering group and that sort of thing. And then where we are at right now, just to dilute the podcast magic just a little bit, because where we are while we're recording this episode is not where we will be when the episode is released. But we're currently putting a first draft of the first survey together, which we will take back to the steering group, and we will get their comments on it before we can release the first survey. And the first survey has some kind of basic demographic questions and things like that, but essentially there's one main question to the first survey, and that is simply, to paraphrase, what do you think we should be researching in diverticular disease? What's important to you? What questions do you think need to be answered? So that is the question for the first survey. So
Yeah.
as we're talking now, that will be out by the time this episode is released. It will be there, and we'll put it in the show notes, a link where if you've been affected by diverticular disease, if you're a carer or a family member or a healthcare professional, please do go to the survey and tell us, because this is where we are now in our process, what is important to you in terms of diverticular disease.
And this is a really important part. And, you hear that, Sam, I'm sure we've heard this so many times throughout, and that is no question is a silly question. And I love that phrase. And that's absolutely 100% when it comes to this survey. No question is a silly question. And I definitely know that from previous PSPs, because I've heard people say, oh, somebody else would have asked that question because it's so basic. And the basic questions, anything from a basic question to a complicated question, is a great question. Part of the process is we have a fantastic information specialist, and she makes sure that all the questions are put under varying different headings and that kind of thing. So every question is a great question. And the previous PSPs that I've worked on, some of the questions that have been asked the most times over get into our top 10. And then we've had a situation where one question was asked and that's got into the top 10. So I think every question is an important question for sure. Yeah. And also, if you do ask a question that you think, oh, maybe there's already an answer to that, I won't ask that, please ask it, because then we know that if you're asking that question, you may not know the answer to it. So and there might be research to it, or there might not. So previously, we've come across a situation where healthcare professionals have gone, oh, no, we've definitely, that's common knowledge. That's common knowledge. But when we've looked into the research of it, actually, it's not common knowledge at all. There's been no research done to it.
Oh.
Or we've had a situation where people have said, oh, there's been research done on that, or, nobody's ever researched that. And then we find out that there's actually huge amounts of research done on it. So So it can flip from research being done or not being done. So please ask any question related to diverticular, because it's really important that we get that information for sure.
The only thing that we can't answer is your very specific questions about your
Yeah,
personal condition, because
correct.
we
Yeah,
should say that this survey is completely anonymous.
yes.
So your questions firstly can't be tracked back to you. So you don't have to worry about being embarrassed or anything. Like nobody will know who's asked what the question. But that also means that we can't reply to your questions and we can't answer things that are really specific to your particular experiences.
Yeah, that's so correct, Sam. The only thing that we do have is at the end of the survey, you'll have your opportunity to put your name and email address. So if you'd like to have updates from us about what's happening on the PSP, and also an invite to our next survey, which we'll explain a little bit in a moment, but you can definitely leave those details. But as Sam quite rightly said, unfortunately, we can't answer individual queries at all.
Yeah, so we get all of these questions that come back from the survey, and then the data will be analysed. So if multiple people have asked the same question, then they'll be grouped together. If we think that something has already been answered in previous literature, then that will be put to the side. As we say, it's not discarded. It's still important to know what people don't know that has been answered, so that we can direct you to information that already exists. That's still good to know. So we go through this data analysis process. And then do you want to talk us through, because I'm involved in another PSP, but we're at a similar stage, we're only a couple of weeks in front. So then we put out a second survey, don't we, after we've collated all of this data, and that asks people to choose then from the listed questions that we've already gathered what
Yeah.
is important to them.
That's absolutely correct. So we will then put out a second survey, and that will have around about between 50 and 60 questions on that survey. And at that point, you can then list the questions, the top out of that list, the top 10 basically of the most important questions that are on that list, to let us know what those are. Once that survey is closed, then we analyze all that information, and then we then take that to what we call a final workshop. Now, the final workshop consists of approximately 15 healthcare professionals and 15 patients and carers, and you all come together. And it's generally an in-person meeting. All the other meetings up until this point have been online. And then on eCall, we go into 4 different groups. And then at that point, you start discussing the final questions. And it's normally around about 30 questions that go to final workshop. And out of those, each group will say, well, actually, after lots of discussion and patients and carers talking about their lived experience and what their most important would be, the healthcare professionals talking about what they feel would be the most important. Again, it's all equal footing. Everybody's coming together with equal voice. And then at that point, you sort of start discussing it. And then there is a methodology behind it. And then by the end of the day, we will have a confirmed, inclusive top 10 of what the questions will be. So they will be the researchers' top 10 priorities for diverticular disease. That's kind of the end process. Saying that we've got the top 10, generally whatever questions are taken to the workshop will always sit on our website. So it will always sit on Bowel Research UK's website, Guts UK website, and the James Lind Alliance website. Again, they're all public knowledge, but all the questions will sit there. The whole, whatever we take to final workshop will sit there, but it's the top 10 that are the most important. Yeah.
And that'll be a
So,
great feeling, I imagine, when we finally get to that point when we have
yes.
the top 10.
Yeah,
That'll be a great achievement.
absolutely. What I will say, Sam, though, is that often it's a fantastic achievement and it's kind of like, oh, we made it. But as the James Lind Alliance said to me right from the very beginning of the very first PSP that I undertook, which was in pancreatitis, my fantastic, the facilitator actually who that we have for our diverticular, our lovely Mary Rose, she said to me, Helen, the PSP is just the beginning And I'm like, what do you mean by that? So what I would like to make clear, and I think I've said this to you, haven't I, Sam, that when the PSP finishes, this is actually just the beginning
Yeah,
of the process, because there is a process, but it's just the beginning. So, it doesn't stop at the final workshop. That's really just the beginning. And so we then start making sure that, researchers hear about this study. We make sure it goes in all the journals. We make sure that it's disseminated wherever we can possibly disseminate it, and start bringing in researchers to start doing the research, because there's no point us doing all of this and asking people their questions if we're not actually going to now do something with it. So
of
this
course.
is just the beginning. This is
Yeah.
just where we begin.
And it's such a huge project, really, isn't it, when you think about, because one of the questions on my list is who is involved in the PSP? And of course, we've got written down the James Lind Alliance. So as you say, Mary Rose and me and you, Helen, of course, and then our steering group of 16 people, one of which is also our clinical lead. And then we have, I think you said 15 healthcare professionals and 15 patients at the final workshop.
Yeah,
And you will notice that 30 is a larger number than the 16 on the steering group. So not necessarily everybody who's on the steering group will be in the final workshop, but you need
correct.
more people than that. So a lot of people involved that way. And then obviously all of the people who are going to be submitting their questions, of which we hope there's going to be lots and lots. And then all of the researchers who are going to come afterwards and do research based on the top 10 as well.
Yeah. And also from our charities point of view as well, we will be presenting at varying different conferences. We will also very much be disseminating this out onto our social media platforms, because we'll also be talking, we've talked a lot about no question as a silly question. There'll be questions, the knowns, unknowns, unknowns, knowns, that kind of thing. And we will be, making sure that that gets published. We will also be producing a final report, which will be in lay language so anybody can understand it. And also speaking to people about why these questions were so important to them. Why did they make that one of the top 10 questions from a healthcare professional point of view as well as a lay person? Because often the answers are very, very different. And I know that from previous experience that often a healthcare professional say that definitely has to be in the top 10. And the patient and carer will say, yeah, that definitely needs to be in the top 10, but it's all for very, very different reasons. And we make that very clear in our final report, which I kind of want to make it clear that this isn't just for the researchers. This is also for the patient and carer and families and everybody that's affected by diverticular disease.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely
So
be sharing it far and wide. And I think it'd be really interesting as well to hear about why people have chosen the questions that they chose, and yeah, what the meanings are
yeah.
behind that and what the experiences are
Mm,
behind that, and seeing some kind of case studies and things like that. Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
yeah. Everybody has a different story, a
Yeah,
different lived experience, or been involved with somebody that's had a lived experience.
yeah.
So it's very important that we get that voice out there.
I have one
No.
final question, which I ask all of my guests, which is what one takeaway would you like to end with? I think our message is clear, isn't it? Do the survey, please.
Yeah. Definitely, please do the survey. Absolutely. And also, the greatness of doing the survey is that we can also keep you updated, because often we hear about this amazing research or these great surveys that come out and we all fill them in, and we never hear anything. Now, I know you're not going to hear anything initially immediately, but certainly within 6 to 12 months, you'll definitely hear updates and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really important. Yeah, please fill in the survey.
Yeah. I'll put the link to the survey in the show notes so that everybody can click on it, has access to it. So yeah, if you're a patient who's been affected by diverticular disease, or a carer or friend or family or a healthcare professional, and you want to have your say on what's important to you about diverticular, what should we be researching? What should the priorities be? What would make your life better? Fill in the survey and yeah, sign up for updates, and we'll keep you updated and watch this space.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam, for organising this today. It's been absolutely brilliant, a great experience.
Oh,
A
thank
little
you for
out of my
coming on.
comfort zone.
No worries. It's been brilliant. So yeah, everybody do the survey. Do it right now
Absolutely.
while you're thinking about it, and we'll sign off and have a great day. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Can I Butt In? This podcast was brought to you by Bowel Research UK. Find out more about the charity, our work, and how you can get involved. Visit bowelresearchuk.org, where you can join our People and Research Together network, or PART, read about our research campaigns and fundraising, or make a donation to support the vital work we do. Let's end bowel cancer and bowel disease.